Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and it is time for Tuesday morning left guard. Yes, we all understand it's a Wednesday, but sometimes Mr. Jeremiah Sirles, former Minnesota Viking, has things going on, so we've made a little adjustment here. But you know what? This allows us to turn the page, to focus on the Detroit Lions and Minnesota Vikings. And you know what I want to get into, Jeremiah? I want to get into some hardcore in the trenches football with you. I want to break down Vikings trenches, Lions trenches. Are you prepared for this?
Oh, I'm ready. I'm always ready. I mean, you talk about trenches. I mean, first of all, the first thing that comes to mind is rip Aiden Hutchinson, right? Like that sucks. That's going to be a huge blow for them. But then you flip it on the other side and you go, I wonder if they're going to throw a pass to an O-lineman this week, right? Like you're like, I wonder, is Dan Skipper going to be out there over Cam Bynum for the try and go run the post fade? But no, I mean, both teams, I think, have excellent trenches. I think, the loss of Aiden Hutchinson is huge for them. But yeah, both teams, you look at where the strength of their team is. Defensively for us, it's up front. Offensively for them, it's up front. So it's gonna be a great game. I cannot wait to watch this game.
It is hard to find mismatches, but there is one that is very distinct. On the Lions side, Elaine McNeil, a recently very highly paid gentleman, versus the interior of the Vikings offensive line. But there is a little bit of a twist here, and we don't know as of our recording if when Dalton Reisner will be bumped up to the 53-man roster. Now, he talked the other day in the locker room, and he said he's in good shape. He's ready to go. He is in football shape to play. And I guess I don't know if it's going to happen this week, but it wouldn't be the most shocking thing if they elevated him and just started him at right guard, because I think that the patience has run out for the right guard, especially in London. Ed Ingram has not developed. Last year took a little bit of a step forward. It's gone straight backward. It's the mental errors. It's the quick losses. There shouldn't be 3 to 5 plays a game for a guard where your quarterback is instantly under pressure. Yet that is kind of the story of the Vikings for the last 6 years. But think about this. Ed Ingram has a lower pass blocking efficiency than Dakota Dozier and Tom Compton and Mike Remmers. It's actually been worse this year than it has ever been for the Vikings. And I think that you just have to go to Dalton Reisner, even if you are sacrificing some of the run blocking ability of Ed Ingram.
Yeah, and I don't think it's one of those things you just throw him out there and start him. You got to rotate him in to start. I don't know. You can say that you're in football shape as much as you want, but to go out there and just start a football game, I mean, you saw the first time Trent Williams did it week 1. He's needing an IV in the back in the locker room. I mean, it's just hard to go in, especially middle of the year, and just think that you're in the same type of fighting shape that the rest of the guys on the field are. So I think that this week, if they do activate him or whenever they do activate him, it's going to be hard for me to believe they're just going to throw him out there and go, all right, 65 plays, man, go for it. But I do agree that it needs to be done. There's a reason he's on this team. There's a reason they brought him back. And with Blake Brandel playing as well as he is, he's playing above expectations. And Ed Ingram playing below expectations. There's really only one answer here, and you got to put Dalton Reisner in there or have them in there. And last chance for Ed. Hey, we're going to rotate you guys, and whoever plays the best in here is going to start next week, right? Just keep competing, keep trying to find ways to go, and eventually the best 5 will find their way out there.
Right. And maybe there's, I don't know. Last year it felt like there was a little bit of a kick in the rear for Ingram when they signed Reisner and they moved on from Ezra Cleveland and stuck with Ingram. But that has always felt like the only reason they've continued to do this is because he was a draft pick. It has not been based really on performance at all. And even when it comes to things like the screen game, there's 2 different touchdowns they could have had if he just does the right thing in the screen game. It's really the details with him. And by year 3, those details need to be right. With Reisner, he is a top half of the league pass blocking guard, but he is switching to the other side. And again, I don't know if they're going to activate him and play him this week, if it could be Thursday, if it could be not even until they play against the Indianapolis Colts. So as far as the trenches go, it is the mismatch on the favor of the Detroit Lions. But I am curious from your opinion about switching from the left to the right side, Because yesterday I asked Wes Phillips about this, and he was like, oh, if you're a pro, you can do it. And I think, I don't know that Wes Phillips ever played offensive line, because I don't think it's quite that easy.
No, it's absolutely not that easy. And yes, if you are a pro, you usually have to do it at one point in your career, unless you're the guy, right? Unless you're the guy and they drafted you. But even then, I think of guys like Olu Fashanu and Joe Alt, who got drafted in the top 10 this year. And immediately they're like, oh, Joe, you've only played left tackle since you were in high school. That's cool. You start at right tackle for us now. Right. Oh, Olu, you played left tackle. Oh, well, our right tackle's hurt. So you're going to go over there and play right tackle. It's something you have to be able to learn and do in the NFL in order to stick around until you become that solidified starter. But it's not as easy as everyone thinks it is from a number of perspectives. And the first thing I always tell people when they're like, well, you just switch from your right to your left, right? It's all the same. Like, next time you go to the bathroom, wipe your ass with your other hand and tell me how easy it is. Just tell me how simple when you're like, oh, I can't even hold the toilet paper, right? It's not as simple as you think. And not just from a physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint. If you're on the left side and you're used to your left hand back and your right hand forward and all that stuff, and all of a sudden things start happening chaotically, the body kind of switches back to default mode, fall back on what you've done forever, and your feet can get all jacked up and all of that. And then the play call, sometimes you're used to hearing a certain play call and, okay, I'm on the front side because I'm on the left side. Now you're on the back side, and it changes the footwork, changes the points. There's a lot that goes into it. But my hope would be that he's been practicing right since he got back pulled up, and say, hey, this is the trajectory in which we see you come on, because a veteran like that needs probably 3-4 weeks to get honed in, get everything put back over there, because the skill set, yes, the same. But if you start flip-flopping back and forth, it's really hard to get in a groove on one single side of the ball.
And he has been there since the beginning of training camp. They had him right over there competing with Ed Ingram until he got hurt, and that's why he's been out since then. So we'll see if something happens there. Also, you could have gone with anything. You could have gone with eat your cereal with your left hand. You could have gone with literally anything except for that. So let's talk about, though, the Lions and how they look without Aiden Hutchinson, because the Vikings tackles have just been flat out unbelievable. They each have allowed fewer than 10 pressures this year. And when you think about the guys that they have faced, Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, Nick Bosa, Brian Burns, these are the highest paid and the best players in the world. But I think that Hutchinson was playing at even another level where they actually would have had to give some help to him. Now it feels like a major, major advantage for the Vikings that, yeah, they still have some guys who could get after the passer, but in no way close to Hutchinson. So does this mean more blitzes from the Detroit Lions, or are they going to kind of stick with it and hope that their interior pressure comes through? How do they make up for losing him?
Yeah, it's going to be really curious. I think we're lucky that we're hitting them. Lucky, I say that, the week right after Aiden's gone, because they're still going to try and figure out, can we get to the rusher? Can we get to the passer without blitzing? Right. And we need to take advantage of that early in the game. If we're stifling their front four and Sam's got all the time back there to throw, yay us, because if that's the case, then the next coming weeks, they're probably going to see more pressures on first and second down. You're going to see on third down, instead of just saying, oh, Aiden, go get him. Right. You're going to have to create and more. I think we'll see more line games. I think we'll see a lot more line games, trying to get guys on different levels, trying to get guys moving around and see if you can't squeeze through a gap. But if I'm Detroit, I'm just going to stick with my original game plan that I've had, trust on the guys in my room, and then have to make adjustments as we go. But I agree with you. When you talk about the elite of the elite rushers in the NFL right now, Aiden was 1 or 2. I think TJ Watt's still probably 1. And then, Miles is always flirting with that. But the level at which Aiden was playing at was unblockable at times. I mean, I watched him run right through guys, run right around guys. He had every move in the bag. He was really feeling the groove of a pass rusher, and to watch him take that gruesome injury is going to be really tough for them to overcome. I wouldn't be surprised if they try and make a trade for a big time edge rusher if it doesn't work out in the next couple of weeks of being able to get pressure without blitzing.
Yeah, I don't know if the Raiders will trade Max Crosby, but that makes the most sense. I probably wouldn't either. And, we're talking a lot over here about, hey, could you get Dexter Lawrence or Jeffrey Simmons? Usually teams just don't trade those guys, but we can talk about it anyway. Josh Paschal and James Houston are not bad players. I think they could still put some pressure on, but the McNeil and Reeder and even Onwuzurike at times, I mean, all three of these guys can get after the passer. And Reeder is a real beast in there. I'm very curious about the Vikings run game against this defensive line and this front seven. If Aaron Jones plays, if Aaron Jones doesn't play, after seeing him out there a little bit Monday, and as we record this, haven't seen Wednesday's practice. So I'm very curious about how much he's able to do in Wednesday's practice. He did have the bye week to try to get a little bit better. Or is it the Ty Chandler and Cam Akers show against this interior that's really good? But I think the Vikings do need a run game here because they have to stay on the field. This is a main goal and objective for the Vikings. Stay on the field. Do not allow the Detroit Lions to control the time of possession in this game.
Yeah, and that you nailed it. It has to be through the run game. And you can say, well, we'll do the quick pass game and all that stuff. But you fall 2nd and 10, 3rd and 10 behind this team, it's really hard to get yourself back in that manageable 3rd down or even convert on those long downs. So early 1st down successful runs is going to be critical because then you can really open up the playbook. But man, it's hard for me to have a lot of confidence after watching that game without Aaron Jones in it and watching the run game basically go to nothing and going, okay, I get Cam Akers was here last year. He had pretty good success when Joe Mixon wasn't playing down in Houston, and now he's up there, but at least he's familiar with the playbook, so he should be able to jump right in and have an immediate impact. But it's got to be a point of emphasis. It has to be something we can't shy away from if it doesn't work early in the game. So many offensive coordinators, if early successful run plays don't happen, they get so nervous, they get so scared. Oh, the run game's not going to work today. It's like there's 12 minutes left in the first quarter, dude. Just stay with it a little bit. Like, give me a couple more series. But that's why it's going to be so critical. And Coach Cooper and this O-line has to find a way to have early success running the ball to give KOC the confidence to stay with it, stay after it, and not put all of it on Sam Darnold to complete an intermediate passing game to try and stay on the field.
Just as an overall performance this year from the offensive line, how would you grade it if you were doing like an A through F?
I think I would probably give it a A-, if I'm being honest. You talk about the number one thing being your tackle play. I mean, the tackle play in the league right now, you're watching quarterbacks get murdered. I mean, Jacoby Brissett's almost dead. I mean, Caleb Williams has been killed multiple times. I mean, these guys are getting just crushed. And then you turn on the Vikings tape, and Sam, for the most part, staying pretty clean, staying pretty upright. And so everything is predicated on that. And then even early in the year, really, you take out this last game, I felt like our double teams inside have been really well between Garrett and Ed and Garrett and Brandel. And then obviously when you go Brandel and Darisaw, 2 massive humans doubling on a 3 technique, I feel like our inside double teams have done a really nice job. It's more the single blocks where everyone kind of takes their turn sometimes, right? Where it's Ed overreaching a 3, or Garrett's not getting the nose reach, or Brandel's not getting a backside cutoff, or even O'Neal or Darisaw's getting creased and not pressing it on the edge. So it's really more the single blocks, which is going to happen. Everyone gets paid a lot of money in this league. But, overall, I feel like they've been a top 10 unit so far.
When we factor in degree of difficulty in the players that they've gone against, I would have to agree that if you only have one weak link, that you're usually able to work around that. Blake Brandel has given up 5 pressures so far this year, which is just remarkably good for him. And he hasn't been the next Zach Martin or something, but he's been a very high quality starting left guard, just solid week in and week out. I thought he struggled at times a little bit against the Jets, but some of that is personnel and just who you're going against as well. And you just can't talk enough about the value of the tackles. And when you look at the average time to throw, I mean, Sam Darnold's had a lot of time back there, sometimes a little too much. And I saw a stat today that he was one of the lower quarterbacks in the league for throwing to his first read, which you want that ball to go to the first read a little bit more from Sam Darnold as we go forward here. But I would give them pretty high marks. I believe PFF has them as 15th in pass blocking and 3rd in run blocking, which is a nice boost from where they were in the run blocking last year, which was just not all that particularly great. Let's go to the other side. This Detroit Lions offensive line is art. It is
so good.
It is really, really something beautiful. How do you counteract a team that has conduciveness, high IQ, versatility, that great tackles, great guards, tremendous center from the state of Minnesota? I mean, they've got everything on the offensive line. How do you deal with that?
I don't know if I'm being honest because I've watched Detroit a ton. I broke them down a ton on our other podcast because they're just O-line porn. And you just watch it and you're going, it doesn't matter who they play. They don't change. They do not change their scheme. They do not change who they are. They truly line up and go, you know what we're doing. Stop it. And no one's really been able to do that to them yet. I mean, you talk about two great backs in Montgomery and Gibbs, and you're just sitting there going, I don't. Do you blitz? Do you not blitz? Do you just put five guys on the line and then you do all that and you stack the box and then here comes Jameson Williams, pew, over the top? It is just such a complete offense, and it starts up front. They've invested heavily into that offensive line. First round tackles, first round center. They upgraded the guard positions in the offseason. And even when guys like Glasgow have to come in at center and spot start, they don't skip a beat. And we got to give a shout out. I mean, people in Minnesota remember Hank Fraley's the head O-line coach. He was the assistant O-line coach with me in Minnesota. He's done a tremendous job. And so it's really going to come down to, you can scheme all you want against this team, but guys up front got to win their matchups. That's the only way you beat this team, is you physically have to just go out and beat the guy across from you and find ways to get disruption, find ways to not let them climb on linebackers. And it's an easier said task than done, but I haven't seen a team really stop their run game once this year.
See, I was thinking along the lines of you have to trick them. Because I mean, that's what Brian Flores has been doing. It's actually interesting to look at the PFF grades for the Vikings pass rushing versus the actual production. The grades have not been super high because they don't have an Aiden Hutchinson or a Myles Garrett that's just winning and winning and winning and winning. But yet they're the second highest pressure rate team in the NFL. And I think a lot of that is, all right, who's coming at me for the quarterback? And the US Bank Stadium noise is a massive factor in this. And that's where the trickery is the only way to get them off of their game, because the one-on-one matchups, you're probably not winning. I mean, when it comes to Penei Sewell versus Jonathan Grenard, Grenard's been great. He's second in the league in pressures going into last week before the bye week, but Penei Sewell is like all world at what he does, but not if he doesn't know where the rush is coming from. Explain to me what that's like. US Bank Stadium level noise, team that throws all sorts of different human beings up there. It seems like it's got to be a nightmare for offensive linemen.
Oh, absolutely. It's a nightmare for the entire offense, to get up and try and get lined up. And there's so much communication that needs to take place because of the exotic looks that you're getting. And usually it's very specific of, hey, in this look, we have to make sure we point that guy, so we're sliding the proper way. And then not only do we have to know, the running back behind us has to make sure that he knows where the point is, right? It's so much communication that needs to happen at the line of scrimmage. When you're at US Bank and that place is rocking and rolling and popping, it's really hard to communicate verbally. You're going to have to create hand signals. You're going to see a lot of guys pointing right over there, trying to show where they're at. And if you can get them up on the ball quickly and get that done, great. But if you start trying to do some trickery with 10 seconds left, 8 seconds left, you look like it's an overload right. And then once there's 8 seconds on the shot clock, oh my gosh, it's an overload left. And then downset hut. That's the kind of stuff where having the veteran offensive line helps, but it's still hard to make sure that all 5, 6, 7 guys that are involved in the protection scheme have to be on the same page, or else that's where you see the free runners, that's where you see guys coming clean, and that's where those big time sack fumbles type stuff happens.
So what do you see with your offensive lineman brain when you watch what Brian Flores is doing at the line of scrimmage?
When I broke it down with my center from the Giants, and we're watching it and just talking through it, so much of it is identifying who the downs are. That's the number one thing is, hey, who's the down rushers, right? Because that's where everything starts. You never want to put, even if he's walking around, like say Grenard's out walking around. I'd say he's moving around. You never want to be like, oh yeah, he's a linebacker, so maybe he potentially ends up on the running back, right? So first thing is identifying, okay, is it a 3 down front? Is it a 4 down front? Okay, so let's say it's a 4 down front. Okay, that's my down guy. Who's my Mike? Who's my Sam? Who's my Will? And then by then, you just have to start trusting the layers of the protection, right? Some protections are Mike based, some are Will based, some are Sam based, and understand, okay, just play within the rules, let things happen in front of you. And if 5 is wrong, we're right. Right. If all 5 of us are wrong, but we pick up 5 guys, and that's the best thing we can do, and we got to let the back pick up the rest. It's when 3 are right and 2 are wrong is when things really start going as a disaster. So you just have to really make sure that you get up there as an O-lineman and just go, hey, that's the point. Here's the call. Roll with it, and not try and get too cute and trying to fix things late.
I have just seen a lot of offensive linemen looking around like, what, who was, why did, and one of the things that Flores does is guys come forward and then go backwards. So it's not just, hey, all right, this guy drops out immediately and you could sort of shuffle and identify. At first, it looks like everybody is coming on the rush. And there was that game that was super memorable the last, not the last time Goff played Flores, but when Goff was with LA and Flores just completely mind bleeped him into a bunch of interceptions and sacks and all that in 2020. And then everyone went, this Brian Flores dude might be a psycho. He knows what he's doing. But I just remember some of those pressures throwing him off because they would start with everyone looks, their first movement is forward, and then certain guys drop back. And it just seems like everyone is looking around going, what is going on here? Getting on the same page with the cadence, the late checks. I want you to explain it. We are so deep into football right now that I want you to explain, because the way Brian Flores has laid this out is that Blake Cashman and Harrison Smith can be the last check. So they go up, they set the protection. All right, there's some movement. Are we going to make a change? But the shot clock, as you said, runs out. And it seems like the defense has this opportunity. But what does that mean when we're talking about like the late check from the defense?
Yeah, so majority of the times it's not as much as people think we're smart. We pretty much have pretty universal calls, right? Like, hey, Rocco to the right, Loco to the left, right? Lily, Rose, right? You can't dummy call yourself too much because then you end up tricking yourself. And I've been parts of teams where we've done that. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, is this the dummy call or are we on the right call here? Right. And especially with noise. So majority of the time, an O lineman's going to come up. He's going to look at, is the center's going to come up and look and say, okay, Mike base protection, Mike's left. Hey, let's go lawn over here to the left. Well, smart defenders, and Eric Kendricks was great at this, Luke Kuechly, right? Like those really good guys that all come up and go, okay, they're going to the right. Let's check and blitz to the left, right? So let's call and blitz to the left. And so you'll see the defense checking, and then people move, and then the offensive line tries to check and get back over to the other side now. And then if they do that and there's 5 seconds left on the shot clock, and all of a sudden they hear, hey, Rocco, they can just look over at Harry and just look and give him the thing, say, hey, you're going, and bounce. And so the defense at home especially definitely has the upper hand of having the last check. When you're an offense and you're at home, you can usually kind of trick them into that using cadence, right? Going on a double, going on even a triple cadence and trying to get them just to see that safety. You go, oh, he's rotating. Okay, let's move back here. Delta set Hut, right? We can usually get the quick cadence on them when you see that. But when you're on the road and you want to make sure everything's buttoned up and going there, the defense absolutely has the second hand to just say, hey, I think they're going this way. Let's send it that way. Or, hey, they're coming this way, so let's try and get them to fool that way so we can create the matchup of the running back on this linebacker instead of the running back on the safety.
And this game in particular, what a magical matchup between the defense and offense here, especially with Jared Goff. He's played in Minnesota a number of times. It does not seem to bother him very much. This is a more talented Vikings defense than he has faced in quite some time, though, as he's been shredding them up and down for what feels like years now. Last year, though, the crowd noise was going. It was a close game, and he just doesn't really flinch. He's been doing it for so long. And he's also very good at, if the offensive line does allow a quick pressure, he doesn't take very many sacks. And this is where I feel like if you let Goff especially get ahead of the sticks, get to second and 3, get to third and short, that he just is very hard to stop because they have all these things that are in there with play actions, which he's awesome at and deserves a lot of credit for that. Sometimes it's like, well, it was a play action. So like, well, the guy executes the heck out of everything that they possibly call. I think him and the chess game with Flores' defense, his experience at US Bank Stadium, his experience running this offense is just going to be really fascinating to watch. It does start with whether they could slow down the running game at all. It's a really good running game and the first true fantastic run game that they're going to face, I think. But I just like to watch it with Goff and how he operates and how he reads the defense. I think something, just a real quick Goff rant is we don't give quarterbacks credit for throwing to wide open people because you're like, what the thing is wide open? I could have made that throw. But the decision, the read, the choice, it matters. And I think he's so good at that. I can't wait to watch the coverages shift and for him to process where he's going with the football, it's just going to be like high level National Football League stuff from him.
Yeah, and the one thing I've been really impressed with him this year is his anticipation on some throws. Right? Guys are wide open, but he's letting the ball go before they're wide open. Right? And then that's where people are, oh man, he was wide open. It's like, but if you go back and watch the release of when he threw that football, the guy's still 5-10 yards away from where he catches the football. And that's the game that I think he's really taken to a next level this year, especially, is just the anticipation. And again, that goes back to the decision making of, hey, this is cover 2. There's my window. I know my receiver is going to be there. Bang. Oh, this is cover 3, or this is man, or whatever it is, and understanding the coverage and knowing where he wants to go with the ball before the receiver is even there. That's the type of stuff that takes the quarterbacks from good and great to elite. And I'm not saying that Jared Goff is elite, but he's playing at an elite level the last 2 weeks. He really is. And the other piece, he hasn't thrown the ball over 30 times in 3 games, I believe it was last I looked. That's a recipe for success, man. If you're throwing the football 28 and I think you went 18 of 18 against Seattle or whatever it was. If you're throwing the ball under 30 times, it's hard to make bad decisions because you're usually setting yourself up and you're picking the chances and picking the times you want to throw the ball, not throwing the ball because you have to. And that's where things start to get really messy. If you have to throw the ball because you're behind or you're behind the sticks or whatever it is, you're playing in the defensive's hands. But if the defense is continually looking and going, are they running or are they passing? I'm not sure. Then there's a ton of opportunity for you to have high percentage, high level throws.
All right, let's go to Samson Darnold.
Hmm.
Samuel. I don't know.
Sammy.
I assume it's Samuel.
I'm assuming Samuel.
Yeah. So Sam Darnold, there has been maybe a seed of doubt planted over the last 6 quarters in Sam Darnold. But when we look at the overall production of the first 5 weeks, the Vikings could not have asked for anything better from him. I assumed there was going to be some turnovers. I assumed there was going to be some ups and downs with him. But 5-0, a very good offense. I would not say that the Vikings through 5 games have an elite offense. I think it has been good and solid. And when Andrew Van Ginkel has 2 pick sixes, that makes your scoring numbers look a little bit better. But I don't think that it's been quite as consistent as you would want it to be. As in 4 quarters of solid play, churning out first downs, moving the sticks. It's been a lot more boom or bust from Sam Darnold through the first 5 weeks. And again, the best form of that, the booms have been outstanding. But against this defense, the Vikings have had a lot of that boom over the last few years. Should we just expect Sam Darnold to do the same thing that Nick Mullins did last year or that Kirk Cousins did for years? Or is this a very different defense that he's facing in Detroit?
Yeah, I think this is a very defense that he's facing. I'm on a call, buddy. Okay, I got to work. I think this is a very different defense than he's ever faced, and maybe not ever, but this year especially because we're not going to blow this team out. And so much of saying, "Oh, the boom or the bust," is because we've been scoring at will early in the games, and we haven't really had to see the 4-quarter grind it out. When we did have to see that, that's where the question marks started coming up. Going, can he consistently do this week in and week out? Because the NFL, I mean, just watching even this week and last week, yeah, there's always 1 or 2 blowouts, but man, every game comes down to 1 score in the 4th quarter. Got to have it moments. And you're saying, can Sam do that when it's not a blowout or when he doesn't have a 28-point lead against Green Bay? And the one sample size that we have of that this year raised a lot of red flags. And so this is a game where if you give this team a turnover, or you give this team a short field off something like that, they're going to make you pay for it. So the operation has to be even that much more crucial. The converting first downs is that much more crucial when you're playing against a complete football team. And Sam's going to have to play his best game yet. And he's played some really good games up to this point. But in order to beat the Detroit Lions, you have to have all 11 guys and your quarterback especially operating at the highest level possible, or else this team's going to make you pay for it in a big way.
What I want to see is Kevin O'Connell having gone into the bye and maybe looked himself in the mirror a little bit and said, how can I get some easy passes for this guy? It feels like when there's a lot of home run throws, and some of this is Darnold, of course, when you watch back the tape, you see some underneath guys that he's just like, should I? No, I shouldn't. I should go down the field. And you're like, Sam, the little nailer underneath, just or he just is almost allergic to Josh Oliver. The number of times Oliver has kind of been open, like, dude, this guy is 6'6". He's got huge hands. Just kind of boop it to him and he'll catch the ball. But I think that should be a main goal of this game. Like Jordan Addison needs 8 catches. He needs, even if it's only for 60 or 70 yards, he doesn't need 3 catches and all of them are for 20 yards and you complete 3 out of 8 or whatever it was against the New York Jets. I think that he needs to be really a lot more involved, and the tight ends need to be more involved. I know Hutchinson is not going to play in this game, but it's okay to use your Johnny Munt and your Josh Oliver and just move the sticks. It's okay to throw a swing pass or a check down to your running back. I don't know if there's been a single check down all year to a running back. And it's kind of like, okay, you don't have to swing for the fences every single time. And I think they're especially going to need that mentality against this Detroit team.
Yeah, I'd love to see the screen game continuing to get back into it too. The screens have been okay this year. They haven't been awesome. They've been okay. But, screens, some draws, some wide receiver screens, just those type of things of getting the ball out of his hand quickly and then just trying to throw it into him, is getting it into your playmakers. Because, like you said, yeah, Addison on a slant for 8 yards would be awesome because he does have that catch and run ability, right? Also having the Jefferson on some underneath stuff too. All that stuff it's there, but I just don't know why he's not comfortable with it. And that's the question. I don't know. Is it I want to push the ball down the field because that's what Kevin wants me to do? Or is it just I don't have the confidence of the tempo type throws of rolling out kind of on the run and just that touch pass for a 9-yard completion instead of being able to unload it down the field accurately for 30 yards, which he's very good at. But sometimes those intermediate balls really just it's a confidence thing for a quarterback to be able to put it up over the linebackers, drop it in before the safety. There's so much room for error if it's a little bit not where it needs to be. I just don't know. Watching Sam, I just don't know if it's a confidence thing that he doesn't feel confident doing it, or if it's more just, hey, this is what Coach O'Connell wants me to do, so I'm going to do it.
I wonder about what he sees. Like when it comes to, I thought Kirk Cousins was really good at this when all of this nonsense is happening in the middle of the field with linebackers, safeties. So, or here comes a robber, or here comes, a Tampa 2 linebacker, whatever. He was very good at identifying it quickly on those short passes and then, anticipating and throwing. I just don't know that Darnold sees the middle of the field all that well. I felt that way in training camp. All of his best plays were outside the numbers, and a lot of them were absolutely spectacular, as they have been. And when it comes to the deep crossers, okay, the guy's 25 yards down the field. I think he could see it there. But in a little bit of the mud, when it's not very clear, I just don't think that I see the ball coming out on time a lot. There have been several plays where he pulls the ball back like, oh, I think I've got it, and then he just doesn't throw. And like maybe not trusting his eyes and things like that. So if you're O'Connell, you do have to work around it. But if it's short outs, if it's swings, if it's even a bubble screen mixed in, and you mentioned the screen game is huge here. They were good in the screen game in a couple of games, but then against the Jets, they threw 2 screens for 1 yard, which I think I had a lot to do with them playing man coverage. But you got to find a way because it's such a big weapon. I want to know from you, kind of a what if they win, what if they lose here. So I think if they win, you start planning the parade route. And if they lose, I don't know. How much do we react to that?
For me, it'll depend how they lose. Is it a close game? Is it all the way to the wire and Detroit makes a play at the end, or we just fail to make a play right there at the end? Because then that tells me we can go toe to toe with these type of teams, and eventually the ball bounces your way. Right? If you put yourself in position in the fourth quarter to win the game, whether it's on the offense or the defensive side of the ball, and it just doesn't roll your way that time, and you lose by 3 or you lose by 6 or 7 or whatever it is, I'm not going to hit the panic button like, oh, well, we can't do it. But if we lose to this team by 14 or more, that's when the question marks are really going to start to come up. Okay, are we as good as we think we are? Where are the holes that this team exposed us on? Because that's a Super Bowl level team. It's where we're aspiring to be. How do we try and catch up to that? So, yeah, if we win this game, I mean, the North is right there for us. I mean, the North we're in the driver's seat. We're going to have the target on our back every single week. We're going to still, every game gets more and more important. But if we lose this game, it's really time to go, okay, how did we lose it? And what do we need to do to find a way to beat teams like Detroit?
I think it has more to do with the path to winning the entire NFC and winning the division than it does how I feel about them. Like, I feel like they're really good. The numbers back up that they're really good. So if you lose to Detroit, I'm not going to go, oh, frauds, but it's not the 2022 type of situation where all the wins were kind of random and everything else. It's much more about if you win this and go to 6-0, and then you go to play the Rams, who you could lose to, but you should beat. And then it's AFC South, AFC South, AFC South, and you're running. And the whole rest of the year, the toughest team out of the division that you play is probably Atlanta, which I think in US Bank Stadium, they're a better team then. And we'll see what Kirk looks like at that point. And then you've got the division games at the end. I mean, you could be talking about getting on a roll that puts you in 13-win type of territory. If you lose, you could still win that many games, but it gives Detroit that leg up, and it just becomes like that much harder to win the entire conference. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. When you get to 5-0, it's crazy.
It's nuts to think about in 5 weeks how we've changed our tone. But that's what's so great about the NFL is you can just look at it and go a week to week basic things change, right? And every week you stack good wins, the more notoriety you get. And if you go to 6-0, yeah, it's more. I always it was funny, you know, as a player, you would always talk about like, yeah, we want to win the conference, but everything was about winning the division. Right. Like, and so that's where my mind always goes immediately first. Is like, yeah, first place in the NFC would be great, but you got to win the division. Right. And so always the first thought in your brain is you got to win those division games and then the rest takes care of itself. And so you go win this one against Detroit and you put yourself in the driver's seat. You give yourself a little bit of breathing room for a hiccup later in the year because it's bound to happen. A hiccup, a run into a team that's playing really streaky and something happens, or you lose a guy, or lose one or two guys for a week or two in weeks 10 and 11. And, you know, you're just kind of trying to battle through there. If you have that 1 or 2 game buffers between you and the next team, it just allows you to kind of, okay, take a second here versus if you're playing catch up and chasing a team like that, you can't afford any of those hiccups later in the year. You can't afford it doesn't matter. Guys, we have to win this game. Every game becomes almost a must win. And that's a really hard place to live in as a player and as an organization on a week in to week out basis.
Yeah. Thinking about a 2-game lead on Detroit versus tied with Detroit feels very different. 2 games up feels like they're going to have to do a lot to get back with you, and tied is neck and neck, 2 of the best teams. And then they have a quarterback with a much bigger sample size of success than the Vikings do. And all of a sudden you go, well, okay, it's not quite the same now. Doesn't mean they're not going to make the playoffs or it's going to be a collapse or anything, but it does kind of change the mindset a little bit. What was your favorite matchup with Detroit? What was your favorite game against Detroit? I've got a nomination. I mean, the most hilarious was 2016. That game was preposterous. That's just,
was that the blocked field goal? We had a blocked field goal in that game, I think.
Could be. Was that well, there was a blocked field goal on Thanksgiving 2017 that would have won Detroit the game, but the guy was offside.
Yes, that's what I remember.
Yes,
yeah, I remember 2017 was a very memorable one for me. It's funny, the most memorable one for me, and for all the wrong reasons, was the Thanksgiving game with the Aretha Franklin 8-minute long national anthem.
Yes,
because I have a very distinct memory of like I have a routine for the anthem. Right, you pray through the first half, and then you kind of get yourself ready for the second half. And I remember I got done praying, and I was like, "We're like on the oh say can you see part still like what is going on?" Like I remember going from like double hands on the shoulder pads to hands below, to kind of looking around like what is happening? Are we being punked right now? But I remember that one. And then the other one that stings me the most is I think it was 16 as well. We go down and we score with like 21 seconds, something like that. I remember the play.
On a reverse to Red Ellis.
I remember the play. We Fusco pulled, gave it to Rhett. He scores. We come on the sideline. Everyone's celebrating. And then I was like, I don't feel good about this. And they went back down, and Matt Prater hit a 59, I think, 59-yarder to lose the game. That one probably is the one I remember the most that eats at me.
So that was to tie the game, and then losing the game was even worse because Golden Tate did his flip into the end zone to walk it off.
Over
it was
Harry.
one of the craziest games I mean, 16 had all crazy games, but that one was pretty wild. And also, Mike didn't understand that he needed to run the clock down and have the Red Ellis in reverse be the last play. So he just ran the play and left all that time left
Well,
for Andre Roberts.
To be fair, we weren't a guaranteed score inside the 5 in 2016.
But what else were you? No, that's true. But what else were you going to do? Like,
Yeah.
I think it was 4th down, so it was just what are you saving this extra 17 seconds for? They're going to get the ball anyway. So if you don't get this, the game's over. You lose. Yeah, that was a wild one. Love to see it, hate to see it. I'll just say, just continue the trend. Boy, you hate to see what's happened in Cleveland. It's so tough for me to watch them now trading off parts. It hurts me deep in my soul that that's hilarious. Like, you get exactly what you deserve, and now Amari Cooper's going to go play probably with a team that could go to the Super Bowl in Buffalo. Congratulations to him. That's the Shawshank Redemption through miles of crap to come out and be like, I'm free. And now he gets to go to the beach in Buffalo and play with the best quarterback other than Mahomes in the league. Congrats to him. I love to see it for him. He's a great player, and he was stuck in a garbage situation there, and now he gets to be free.
And speak of like serendipity for the Buffaloes, his cap hits like 1.9 million. Like it's nothing, right? Because they restructured all that and paid him all that money up front. So Cleveland paid him to then trade him, and Buffalo's like, I'll take one of the fastest and maybe more complete receivers of the decade. Yeah, for 1.9. Yeah, we'll sign that up and take him right there.
Hey, I'm sure that 3rd round pick will solve all their problems that they got back. Good for you, Cleveland.
Good job, Cleveland. Good job, everybody. My love to see it is the fact that within like hours of trading for Davante Adams, him and Aaron Rodgers are hanging out together, sitting on the McAfee show. He just pops his head in. I'm like, did you just like crash, stay the night? Like, Aaron, I'm here. I could live with you now, right?
Very fast flights these days.
Very
from
quick
Las Vegas
flights
to New
from
York.
Vegas to not Orchard Park,
Newark,
to Newark, New Jersey. But I've said it before, and I've said this to my buddies. Trading Davante Adams to the Jets is the equivalent of the Jets having a baby to save the marriage, right? like we all kind of hate each other. No, we don't really love each other anymore. But if we just have a baby, maybe that'll solve all our problems, right? And that's what this is. This is let's see if we can do it. Bring him in, and I think Garrett Wilson's going to start having some cryptic tweets and Instagram posts soon.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I think that one's going to start to be the drama that can fill, because everyone's like, oh, this is so great. From an outsider's perspective, yes. But if you're Garrett Wilson and you're going, I'm wide receiver 1, and Davante Adams walks in and goes, you were wide receiver 1. That's going to cause some issues, and I think that's going to cause some problems. Lazard knows his role, and he's not worried about anything. He's like, I've seen this movie a million times before. But it's just going to be very curious to see what the Jets organization does now with Davante there. They looked better against New York the other night. I was at that game, right? They looked better. They looked like they got Breece Hall more involved and all that stuff. But it's still not a very high-functioning football team at times.
My other love to see it is college football. They said the NILs would ruin college football. Oh, well, it's just going to be one team just divvies up all the money and then just dominates and everything else. And while are there players even going to try to play football if you give them any money? What will they even do? Oh, they're trying, and it's great. The parity in college football may be the best that I've ever seen. The Oregon-Ohio State game was just hair on fire for 60 straight minutes of football. It was absolutely tremendous. You never know what's going to happen in a game. The entire day of college football last Saturday was great. The Colorado game came down to the end. Even the old Gophs had to pull it off against UCLA. And PJ Fleck said, if these people are ever, I don't know, facing the toughest moment of their lives, they'll remember the time we beat UCLA. And I was like, yeah, well, all right, sure, fine. He got my favorite part though was he slid in I guess those confidence capsules work, but he almost lost to a 114. What the frick are you talking about?
Confidence capsules, baby. Gotta have them. Gotta have them.
Oh man. I love all of that. And I actually have started to love how comical the PJ Fleck thing is. And I actually do love their safety.
Yes.
Coy, whatever his name is.
He's very
awesome.
He's very fun to watch. He's very good at football. I mean, to just piggyback off the NIL stuff, I agree with you. I think it's making college football more competitive. So many, even just 2-3 years ago, everyone said the same thing. We might as well just let Bama and Georgia play right now for the national title, right? Every week they're rolling dudes by 40 and 50, and it just was okay. But what NIL has done is it's created this chasm that if I'm a 5-star recruit coming out of high school and I've got offers from Georgia and Bama and Oregon, Ohio State and Oregon, do I want to go there and sit for 2.5 years? And then behind the other 10 5-stars that were recruited in front of me, or do I want to go to an Illinois or a Purdue or a Vanderbilt, and they're going to pay me equally the same amount of money as that other place, but I'm going to play, and I'm going to play early. And then guess what? If it doesn't work out there, I can just hit the transfer portal in 2 years, and my price is even going to be higher because I played. And that is what has made everything so great. Is you're seeing the 5-stars start to disperse, the 4-stars start to disperse more across the country, which is creating higher and higher talent levels, which is creating for quality, more and more quality games. So I love it. I think the NCAA is going to have to figure out what they're going to do next year with the revenue share model. That's going to be interesting how they manage all of that. But college football, from a fan's perspective, could not be in a better spot.
It's been entertaining every single week. Last thing, just real quick. Did you have any other love to see it, hate to see it? Or you good? Okay. You think the Vikings win the football game?
Unfortunately, I do not.
Oh,
I want to say yes, but watching what Detroit has done the last 2 weeks, I think it'd be a fool to bet against them. I think the Vikings keep it close. I think it's a great football game all the way around. But I just think that run game for Detroit, you get into the second half, they control the clock a little bit more. It's going to be really tough uphill sledding. But I don't think this is a blowout by any means. I think it's going to be a great football game. But it's hard for me to look at that Detroit team and think that they don't come out with a win.
I'm going to cop out and wait till Aaron Jones's status is clear. I think it's
a
game,
huge factor,
right?
It's a huge factor.
Jeremiah Sirles, can't wait to break this one down with you. Next week's going to be really fun for Tuesday morning left guard, because we just go out of one game into the next one. So it'll be a good time. Well, thank you so much, as always, for your time. And we'll talk to you next week.
Absolutely. Football.